Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I missed you, first of all. When I don't, even if it's a holiday, when there is no class, I feel lost. As I said before, it was Dr. Stone who said to me, my teacher, you teach what you want to learn. And I wouldn't be half as smart as I appear to be had it not been for the need for me to teach you. So you play an integral part in my growth and my evolution. So I wanted today to talk a little bit more about how we are processing fears, loss, and grief. How do we really process these feelings? How do we move through them? To a degree or another, all of us, because of what's happening around the world right now, it's either we lost somebody very dear to us, close, a friend, family member, or we lost a privilege, we lost a right, as it's happening now to women in the United States. We lost what was a given for us, or we losing mobility in the case of a quarantine, or we're losing or there's a fear that's creeping in that there's an impending doom related to a specific thing that's about to happen to the world. Whether that doom is financial crises, we're all witnessing around the world food prices that are going up, escalating. I went to Trader Joe's today, which is, reasonably cheap supermarket. And I think I bought 4 items. It was toilet paper. What did I buy again? 2 salad mix. They are about $4 each. Toilet paper, and there was one more item. A lemon. 2 lemons. 1984. This would have been around $15 in the past. No more than that. And that's what I'm talking about the fact that we are all witnessing it in our pocketbook, that there is a crunch. Things are getting way too expensive. And whether it is at the pump with gas prices was really escalating. If you're driving, this is a real problem. I have to say that in Europe, the Germans are doing something else. The government has reduced the ticket prices in all the trains nationally, dramatically reduced them, to allow and encourage the German to take mass transit and not use their own car and vehicle to drive everywhere. I think that's a very smart move, something we probably would never see in the United States. Okay? So the government is subsidizing so that because they know people at the pump are paying because of the move they're making in supporting Ukraine against Russia. So there is that fear. There's a fear that we sense there's going to be a recession and that things are going to get worse and people are afraid financially. I know I feel it. I sense it. I perceive it. It's like a cloud that's swirling about. And all of these experiences are creating fear of some kind. There are things that are about us, that are coming around us, that seem to generate fear, and that all these fears are sinking us into a deep state. The only word that could come to mind is vulnerability. We begin to profoundly feel vulnerable, but we become vulnerable to financial crises. Do I have enough money? Will I be able to survive? Or for that matter, food supply chain, scarcity of goods. Will I find good? Will I be able to eat? Will I be able, even if you have items stuck up in your house, how long would that last? So there is a lot of thinking about, at least internally in myself, about this vulnerability, this sense that, and I'm not even going to add to that the global events. Right now, Japan and all East Asia, it's so hot, so tremendously hot that Japan right now had shut down that nuclear reactor. They're thinking about refiring it because that was because of the leak several years ago. They're thinking of refiring it because they don't have any other choice, because it's so hot now that they are burning up. 40 some degrees centigrade average temperature right now, when it should be rainy season for them. Okay, I'm talking about, what is it, 90, 98 or something like that. It's insane. Or for that matter, another example, a crazy weather system. We just had a major flood in Yosemite National Park, where roads got washed out, the whole park is going to be shut down indefinitely. There are all this. As this just happened, today I just saw in the news, wildfire in the same park. 1 week is one thing, the other week. And again, there is a sense of vulnerability that whatever is happening is way bigger than you and I to control. And we are beginning to feel unsafe and vulnerable. And whether that vulnerability comes, for example, from the mass shooting. I just saw a statistic again today. There were more than 300 mass shootings that happened so far in this year, in 2022. This is July, 10th? July 10th. Okay? Over 300. What, for the rest of the year, there's going to be another 300? It's terrifying. You're sending your kids to school, you don't know if they're gonna make it through recess. So there is a lot of deep and profound things that are happening around the planet that create panic, emotional agitation, and deep and profound fears. And for us as spiritual beings, we have to use these various strong emotions as an opportunity for us to go deeper into what's behind the vulnerability, what's behind the feeling of being unsafe. What am I being afraid of? Let's say, for example, you have problem paying your rent or your mortgage. Deep in your core, what is the vulnerability of not having those funds? What is it going to create for you? In your head, what's the worst case scenario? Is it you being homeless? And if it is, then what is where is that feeling? Have you ever experienced that feeling before? Did that feeling, is it the first time you're experiencing it? Or did it ever show up before? And if it did show up, when was this? And you should do the same thing for whatever feeling. If it is, for example, loss of a job opportunity, loss of you being with somebody that you love that passed away. That fear is very specific. That loss, that grief is very specific. And the way grief operates, it is a silent pain, and it is an internal pain. Because the person may be walking next to you, you may not know that they're grieving. In past history, in all other culture, when someone was grieving, they used to throw sand and dirt on their face and on their hair so that everyone would see them grieve. Back home in my country, when you lost your parents, you have a special color carnation that you wear on your lapel to let everybody know that you lost a mother or a father. There is no indication in our culture that will tell you that someone is grieving a loss. And because that doesn't show up, you don't have the engagement, because there is pain where the way to get rid of the pain, particularly grief, is for someone else outside of you, that's not you, if it's you grieving, to engage you in conversation and look at you straight in the eye and say to you, I am profoundly sorry for your loss. I am deeply and profoundly sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do for you? Can I help you in whatever way possible? Because when somebody says this to you and you're grieving, it allows you automatically to, and they have to be very honest and direct, and they have to be staring at you or be so engaged and so present with you that they begin now to create an external platform to allow the grief to spill out from you. Because otherwise it remains like a secret thing, a shameful thing that you're holding because you're trying to hold yourself together. In a lot of other cultures, particularly back home, when people are grieving, they go into hysteria. They start screaming and yelling. They throw themselves against the coffin. They do a show to demonstrate the grief in very dramatic ways. Sometimes they start screaming and yelling. They have to take them to the hospital and give them tranquilizer. Okay? And when you express enough of this, you become empty and you feel better afterward, actually. But in a modern society where we have to function, a lot of us grieve by holding ourselves together and being strong. And in the meantime, the sense that you cannot swallow anything, or that there is a hole in your chest and you cannot eat anything, remains with you. Because something deep and profoundly is missing from you. Whereas, as I said, in other culture back home, I know the Italian and the Greek mourn, and some African countries, they mourn the same way. They start screaming and yelling, and they let it all out. And the other thing back home in my culture as well, if you're mourning for a spouse or whatever, people wear black. They wear black sometimes for 2 years, for 3 years. As long as they feel the grief, they wear black. And they continue to wear the black, again, as an indication in the society that they're grieving. I don't believe in the color code and all of that. I think it's more for show, to be perfectly honest. But there is something to be said about creating indicators for people to know that you're emotionally tense and you're going through a certain kind of process. But the grief, as I said before, is like an accordion. So if you're grieving the loss of one person, every other, let's say, boyfriend or girlfriend, every other girlfriend and boyfriend that you may have in the past, that you've lost in the process of the grief, they will come up. Or the loss of something else will become the trigger. It could be the loss of an animal, the loss of a cat, the loss of a dog, the loss of a pet, and all of a sudden it becomes a trigger and it opens up a connection to the loss that you're currently having. So what I'm trying to say is that all of these emotions are there to teach you something about yourself. It's not something for you to hide, to suppress, to push down, and to pretend it's not there. When I'm having, and I lost my mother recently, when I'm having a bad day, good thing my siblings and I are talking, we can talk to each other. I'm having a horrible day today. The grief is all over the place. I can't swallow, I can't drink anything. I feel absolutely horrible. I feel the loss, like something is either blocking my esophagus, or there's something blocking my chest, or there's a hole. And I'm so uncomfortable. And when I'm that uncomfortable, I'm irritable and I snap at people. So if I can talk about it, I actually feel better after I speak about it. When I don't talk about it and I camouflage it, I put like a happy face on it, I keep putting a happy face, it might work for a few seconds or a few minutes, but it's not sustainable. The way to deal with it is to face it and find out the depth of the grief. Sit with the fear, have a conversation with it, invite it for tea, and try to figure out the root cause of the feeling that you're feeling. Because grief is complex. Sometimes it manifests in 5 stages. There was the denial, there was the negotiation, there was the anger, there was the depression, and there was the acceptance. And sometimes you can feel 2 or 3 of these emotions in one day, and your body feels like a yo-yo. One moment you're in denial, the next moment you are negotiating. Well, if this, that already happened, this person will still be alive, and blah blah blah, and I wish I had known, that kind of thing, where you're negotiating. And then the next thing you know, you're angry. And all of them happening in the span of 2 or 3 hours. And you, in the meantime, thinking that you're going ballistic, because when you're watching your emotion flying all over the place like this. So it helps if you sit down and begin to and you can map it out, and you can begin to figure out, okay, these are the feelings that I'm having. I'm identifying this as negotiation. I'm identifying this part I'm feeling now as depression. I'm identifying this as rage and anger. And if you can identify them, it helps you better, because you can once you begin to understand, because when you don't know what's happening to you, you're feeling some strange thing in your body, and you don't know how. This is why people scream and they yell back home, because they don't have the emotional intelligence to know all of the sophisticated things. The best way for them to deal with it is to scream and try to get whatever they're feeling inside of their body out of their system. But since we cannot do this for the most part, we become more intelligent about trying to identify, this is what I'm feeling now. Okay, if I'm feeling anger, what is the root cause of this anger? What am I really angry about? Is it the loss of my, whatever it is, the loss maybe, or am I angry about something else? What is it that I'm not seeing? What is it that I'm not perceiving? Show me the truth. So when I stand in a fear, for example, about the financial crisis and the fact that things are getting more and more complicated, I was living on a budget, and the budget was already tight and struggling. Now seeing all prices going up, there's a part of me that's like, I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. And when I go deep into that vulnerability and that sense of, I don't feel safe, I'm going to lose whatever little bit I have right now, and I'm going to be thrown to the wolves. I don't know where I'm going to go. As I go deeper and deeper and deeper into, actually, I let the fear, instead of suppressing the feeling, understand what I'm trying to say? Instead of suppressing the feeling and trying to muffle it with something else and not go down the rabbit hole, I go down the funnel. I go down the rabbit hole. And I sit with what is the worst thing that this fear is trying to trigger in me? What is the worst outcome? And I go down the funnel. And when I'm at the bottom of it, I sit with it for a while and I ask myself, is this really true in an abundant universe? In a universe where infinity times infinity exists, what I am afraid of in the instance of, let's say, inflation and high cost and everything else, what I'm afraid of is lack of money. But the universe is not really run by money. Abundance is not about how much money you have in the bank. Abundance is something else. It's a connection to the flow and the perpetual renewal that exists in the universe. And if I sit deep down and say to the universe, I'm afraid, there's a part of me that's afraid. It's not all of me. The part of me that's afraid I won't have enough money to feed myself. I won't have enough money to pay my bills. And if I sit deep, deep, deep into that space and I ask the blessed fear, I take that vulnerability, that fear, afraid of not being able to pay my bill, or missing my loved one, or the loss of my job, or the loss of my mobility, the loss of whatever it is that I realize that's the trigger emotion. But when I go into the blessed, when I go so deep into the core of that vulnerability, and I say to the universe, you are perpetually renewing. I am surrendering that deepest fear into you. I am giving it to you. I'm unburdening myself. This is the greatest fear that I have. I will not be able to eat. I will starve, or I will become homeless, or I will, whatever it is that you're good at as you go down the funnel. What is the greatest fear? I'm surrendering it to you. Because I cannot control it. For example, climate change, or bullets, stray bullet coming from gunshots, from mass shooting. This is not something you and I can control. So I have to go into the depth of my soul to face the greatest fear. And whatever it is, I am going to gift it now. I'm going to surrender it and let it go and say to the blessed fear, take this cup away from me. Take this cup away from me. That burden, that disturbance in my stomach, that thing that I can't swallow, take this cup away from me. This is, again, remember what you're addressing. This is the quantum field. This is the blessed field. This is infinity times infinity. In the blank like this, it disappears. In a snap, it's gone. You might have to repeat this enough time and do the universal breath to move the feeling and the emotion out of your body and surrender it into source. You might have to do multiple universal breath to surrender it, to release it from your, wherever it exists in your body, release it into at the top of your head into source and let it go. And when you're letting it go, see yourself throwing a rock into a pool of light, surrendering. And from that process of actually releasing this fear, releasing it by throwing it outside of your body, releasing it into source, into the blessed field. From a miraculous and impossible way, the blessing that you're seeking will come back to you. Because infinity times infinity will respond. The problem with us is that all of these fears and all of these items, we are tactically and intellectually and mentally trying to control them. Where what we should be doing is to go deep into the dark funnels of our soul to see where the most vulnerable trigger, the most vulnerable point of that the fear can lead us into, and then realize that this is the belief that this particular fear and trigger is trying to remove from you. That's the gift that this challenge is trying to present to you. You need to release this. Because whatever that is, that's at the bottom of that funnel, that's what you have to let go of. And then use the universal breath. Take the breath from the core of the earth, let it move through the bottom of your feet, through your body, counterclockwise, rotating, and let it go like a funnel, like a tornado. Move through you and take all of that feeling out and release it into source. Let it go. And do that breath multiple times. And once it is completely released and completely let go, then the universe, and you will feel it. Once you feel the energy outside of you, there will be a great sense of relief and a tremendous sense of being unburdened and a sense of stillness and surrender. And once you are in that space, then you can begin to, you will feel that the universe is beginning now to bring you a blessing. And in most instances, in a matter of hours or days, the solution set or the way forward, whether it's an idea that will pop into your head at that moment, whether it is an opportunity, a phone call, somebody presented something to you. If you had a money issue, all of a sudden, somebody says to you, I'm going to gift you, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, the problem is removed. You're unblocked and unburdened. Any questions, any comments?
Pierre, do you see grief as fear?
It's not fear.
No.
No, it's not fear. Grief is a loss.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fear. It's a loss. And that's why I was explaining it as a separate pocket or parentheses, which is that and the way you process the loss is that you have to go and understand which phase you're feeling at the moment. Because a lot of time when three emotions are mixed together, you just don't know what the hell you're feeling. You just know that you're feeling this huge thing inside of you that's blocking everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Thank you.
Right. So if you sit with it, however, what happened is that it begin to you begin to deconstruct it. And you can begin to identify, okay, I'm feeling at this moment anger, I'm feeling depressed, and I'm negotiating. Or I'm feeling whatever the feelings are. And then, and if you go even deeper, it will, let's say you lost a friend or family member, like I lost my mom very recently. For me, I know intellectually and emotionally sometimes, not always, but intellectually sometimes, that it's the best thing that happened. Because my mother was, for the past 3 to 4 years, she needed 24-hour care. So she's in a better place. She's not in the kind of, she was taken care of like the best because she was not in a home. She was at home with my sister. I mean, collectively, she really had the best care. But it was still a burden for somebody that was so mobile, so agile, and so this, to have people constantly moving her everywhere on a wheelchair to go to the bathroom, to do this, to change her. It was too much. So I know it's the best thing for her. And I have to say to you that the thing that I miss the most, I don't want to cry when I'm saying this, I can feel tears coming. Okay, I have to hold myself together. The thing that I miss the most is actually because my mother had dementia. And when she began to kind of regress back, because my mother raised 4 kids by herself. We all went to private school. We did all kind of things back in Haiti. She sacrificed everything for us. She was the man, the woman, the everything. And to see her in such a state of vulnerability reversed the roles, where me and my sisters had to stand up and be her defender and her protector. And there is a kind of, it's very hard to explain. That vulnerability that I saw in her, physical vulnerability, etc., she was like a little child. I was not angry because of the dementia, because everybody will have something. From a spiritual standpoint, I understood this. But I was, what I'm missing right now is coming to my sister's house and seeing her in a wheelchair or laying on the couch, looking vulnerable as I kissed her. That's what I miss. That's the part that when I walk into my sister's home and she's not there, that's the part that breaks my heart. And the house is completely in silence. Completely in silence. So from an intellectual point of view, and everybody grieves differently. There's no real formula, but I'm just sharing with you my personal experience as a way maybe to kind of like give you the permission to explore how it feels for you. Yes, there are other parts of her because she was sick for a long time, for almost 14 years. There's other part of her life that, that I remember when we were younger, when she was more able and all that. I miss all of this. A lot of people were saying when you're having someone with Alzheimer's, you begin to watch their personality change. That never bothered me because I saw her regress and become so vulnerable. And I knew it was my role and my duty at this time to step up for her as she was there for me. I knew it, and that didn't bother me. What I'm missing now is her presence and holding her in her forehead or helping her get up or moving into the next room or doing something. That's the part that I miss.
Pierre?
Yes.
I was just, I don't know, it's a comment/question because as you know, I lost my mother relatively recently as well.
Yep.
And I realized at that time that, interesting enough, I had the sense of loss, and especially like if I saw her picture, it would just, I would feel like I wanted to cry. Mm-hmm. But at first, actually, the dominant emotion for me was not so much loss, but actually a fear. And I realized that it brought up in me a fear of death and dying. There's just somehow, for no particular reason, it just showed up more stronger at the time. So I did the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, and I did a lot of prayers for her, and I felt her like go higher and higher and go to the light. And then I had a strong awareness that her higher self is working with her. So it's more kind of like maybe the Buddhist perspective on death and dying, that between having that experience and doing the mantra, it was very helpful for me to let go of the fear and dying. And I repeated the mantra, you know, like you do it for 49 days every day. Then I finished it, then I stopped, and I still felt the fear kind of come and go. You know how it kind of still shows up a little bit, but then I felt like it lifted, you know, a lot of it. I don't know if all of it is gone, because it's such a deep thing, you know, for us, especially if you raised as Christian, where we're lacking the concept of reincarnation and all those things. But only recently I'm realizing that fear of death and dying is less dominant, and what's dominant is maybe just the loss itself. You know, so I'm just thinking that, and then so that's one part of it. And the second part of it, I was also thinking how it's funny with the loss, how now you can, how, you know, loss of a job or loss of a loved one, it's kind of a, even though they both lost, it's a very different experience. So I'm just thinking to myself that as we practice this, there must be a way to tell the difference and be able to distinguish maybe between that kind of loss and like a loss of a loved one or loss of a job, because I'm just thinking that will be helpful down the road, because as we pick up the stuff from the planet, if we can tell better which is which and what is what, they might help us not to be so vulnerable also for what we're picking up from the planet, what's not ours. And I'm just thinking that maybe if I understand that losses of fears better, maybe it will help me have a little stronger boundaries. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to feel anything, because that's nonsense. But at the same time, I don't want to get overwhelmed, you know. So trying to like have just some sort of a healthy boundary, understanding, oh, this is what I'm feeling, this is maybe loss of my loved one or death and dying, this is maybe something else, and I know the difference, and maybe that can help me also have a little more stronger boundaries, so I'm not so much vulnerable. I want to feel my own grief and loss, but I don't necessarily want to pick up too much the planetary stuff.
Okay, thank you for that, Ursula. Good points. And I'm going to start out, the multiple things that you brought up. I'm going to start out by saying feeling overwhelmed is actually a positive thing. Okay, that's the first thing. Because the moment you feel that way, it is an exploration. Was it Joseph Campbell that says, the cave that you're afraid to go into holds the treasure that you're seeking? So when you're feeling overwhelmed, that's the exact place that you need to go into, to explore exactly what exists in that cave. And you brought an excellent point. A grief can trigger all kinds of emotion. This is why you have to go down the funnel. Yes, it's a loss and you may be missing somebody, but in your instance, it triggered for you your own mortality. You reminded me while you were saying this, when I was 8 years old, 9 years old, in a church around the corner from my house. You know, kids, I'm too curious and I wanted to see everything. They had a casket, open casket for a man that had died, member of that church. It was a Seventh-day Adventist church. And I used to hang out in their yard. They have a beautiful yard with lots of trees. And I went inside the church and I looked at the dead body. And I remember the fear that it created in me of what mortality looks like. I was haunted by that image multiple nights in nightmares. And it created a fear of death and dying for me. I was 8 years old. And so loss and death can trigger all kinds of feelings and emotion. It can be a doorway for multiple ways. And that's why I keep saying all the time, there is no wrong or right way to grief.
Right.
So you need to follow what your feeling is telling you and your emotion. And if, for example, you're picking up stuff that are related to the planet, for example, planetarily, we're going to go to a recession.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a whole financial restructuring by 2024 to 2027. It's going to be restructured.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people it's not going to be a smooth transition. It's going to be extremely bumpy. And knowing this, it's a way to, how do I prepare? How do I position myself? What do I do to be ready for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it also will kind of like your higher self will kind of lead you too, right? That's the handkerchief kind of thing.
That's the reason why I'm saying that don't run away from being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because that's feeling of being overwhelmed, instead of running away from it, and I have to figure out a way to block. No, the exact opposite. Go into it.
Well, I mean, let me kind of rephrase this. Yes, I mean, I definitely, when I quoted it, like we did meditation this morning, but I want to sit with the feeling and then not try to push it away because it's trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, kind of, you know, there is that also awareness that some of it might not be us, some of it might be coming from archons being inflated, right? And you kind of, that's part of the overall awareness as well, right? Just as a healthy boundary kind of thing.
Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
Yeah.
So the idea is for you to evolve discernment. And how else are you going to evolve discernment if you're not being tested?
Yes, and also that's why I was thinking part of the discernment is to understand exactly as you're saying, there's different types of grief or loss, right?
Yeah.
And then you can tell the difference.
And you can figure out, okay, this belongs to me, and this is external to me. And particularly for the things you cannot control. You and I cannot control climate change. This is way above our pay scale.
Yeah.
We cannot control the climate catastrophe we're living through.
Yeah.
So whatever is happening is beyond the scope of me trying to change, alter, or aspire to do anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I need to do is get out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because disaster is coming.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that when we sit with the fears that these things are going to trigger and go so deep and so profoundly inside of us, we will know what the right answer is. Spirit, your connection, the morphogenic listening space where you're in coherence with yourself, it's going to create an opportunity and give you a hands up, a way out.
Yes, totally. Yes. So morphogenic listening is again so important.
Yes. It's going to give you a way out, and you will be able to figure out, that's what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the grief may show up again, as I said, it's multiple. Okay, to a degree or another, everybody on the planet is grieving.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's not one person that's not grieving.
Yeah.
There's loss everywhere. Nothing since the beginning of the pandemic will ever be the same again. Things have dramatically changed.
Yeah.
It had started before with climate change, but right now everyone is affected to some way, particularly when food shortages are beginning to happen and supply chain issues, gas prices, and all these things. They're going to affect energy. Right now, India, South Asia, Sri Lanka, it's a huge crisis. People stormed the President Palace today. Stormed it because
yeah, and like in the West, in the US, there is the drought is really getting bad, and they don't talk about it enough because all the places that haven't had the major rivers and dams haven't had rains for years. So what farmers are doing, they digging into the underground water to continue to get water for the crops. But that water is going to run out.
Of course.
And they don't have a plan B when that water is going to run out. And the way this is going, you probably, who knows, by next year, there are already some places where they cannot dig any lower. There's no more water.
Yep.
So that's also kind of in denial. I think it's because of the elections. They not really they're not talking about it.
Yep.
But just wait and see when that's gonna explode in our faces.
Yeah.
And all the little crops that we've been growing here, that's been so expensive that no water, what they're gonna do? They can't get no water anywhere.
Yeah. So
and that's like a time bomb waiting. Then they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
But that's a time bomb.
And again, all these things are beyond the scope of you and I figuring out what we're supposed to do. Maybe we should go on a homestead, go to Guyaville and start growing our own thing up there. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But the point being is that for now, whenever these opportunities present themselves, wherever you're feeling of being overwhelmed, or the feeling, particularly when you're grieving, it's the sensation, literally like that something is stuck in your esophagus, in your stomach, and something is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know how to get rid of it.
Yeah. I'm also kind of, I don't know, I haven't had the time to explore this because I was doing house blessing and other things yesterday. But I was also reminded by my higher self, we have these, you sent us these Lady Kuan Yin mantras previously.
Yes.
And I was encouraged to look into them again and see if, and to repeat them.
Yes.
To be helpful around this time and the issues that we're dealing with. I haven't explored it again. I have to look back and understand the difference between the two because it's been a while.
Yeah.
But that's just something that my mighty and presence suggested as well.
Yeah. The mantras are extremely helpful, actually.
Yeah.
Because the frequency and the vibration of it will shatter whatever is that you're holding. And basically, the process I'm just described, it will accelerate that process.
Do you remember off the top of your head what was the difference between the two mantras?
I don't remember the translation. Okay. I sent you
don't worry about it. Yeah,
I'll send an email with all of the translation and the difference between them. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, no worries.
I think one of them was saying hail to she who hears the cries of the world, or something like that. And the other one was hail be the flower of the lotus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's the difference between the two. And the flower of the lotus is basically the spirit of Kuan Yin, mercy.
Right. Which I guess, I think it
one of them is not really a mantra. The one who's saying hail be she who hears the name of the world. It's a repetition of the name of Kuan Yin. It's a salutation.
Right.
It's extremely beneficial. I feel very connected to it. It actually, every time I listen to it, it transports me very easily into my heart space.
Right. Out of fear, basically.
Yes.
Mhm.
The other one is a practice that's connected to like Buddhist. For example, when a Buddhist swings their prayer wheel, inside the prayer wheel is written Mani Padme Hum in Sanskrit in a long parchment that they wrap around a central rod.
Mhm,
When they're
mhm.
spinning it, they are releasing, because the second one, now remember, Mani Padme Hum is to remove negative karma. It's to clear negative karma.
Okay.
And as you're spinning, and because when the monks repeated Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme, and they're spinning it, they're removing and they're clearing karma and negative energy.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. It's just because I've been feeling also like this, like you were saying, inside, like in my throat, and those things that you were saying, and I didn't know. I was like, I wish I was just thinking I would like to have, how we used to do Ho'oponopono,
Yeah.
and that was so helpful, but we don't do that so much anymore. So that was suggested to me as a replacement to that.
Yeah. I'm still doing the Ho'oponopono, by the way. I'm silently to myself. I do it all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the thing again to remember is that the feeling of being overwhelmed, and sometimes again I open up naturally and nothing is in my chest. I can feel free. I'm breathing and everything feels wonderful. And there are other days where everything is contracted. And when that is contracted, it's connected to the loss of some kind. And again, it's an opportunity. And I have more difficulty at that moment because when you're in that state, somehow there is an amnesia. You don't remember the protocol. You don't remember what you're supposed to do to remove it. That's why I'm doing the class as a reminder. You already know everything I'm saying. I'm just reminding you. Because when you're in that state, you're so stuck with that stuff inside of you and all this multiple emotion, you don't even remember what you're supposed to do to move it, to dislodge it. And as I said, around the world, there are multiple ways of doing this. In certain kind of culture, you scream, you yell until you pass out, they take you to the hospital and they give you tranquilizer. In other culture, you throw dirt on your hair and your body, you start, or in my culture, you were black. It's not atypical for at least a year from the day you bury your family member, your parents, or your spouse until and you wear a carnation, and depending on the color of the carnation, if it's white, black, or pink, or purple, it tells someone who sees you who you lost.
In Europe, they used to do that too. I remember when I was growing up in Poland, they used to do that.
Yeah. And for at least a year, you were black and black only.
Yeah.
Sometime 2 years, sometime 3 years, depending
Yeah.
on the degree of grief that you're feeling.
Yeah. Especially like if it was a wife of a husband or a husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that you have to figure out, my mother was very clear from day one. She's like, at my funeral, I don't want everybody to wear black. So there was a lot of grays. There was a black and white pattern. There were, she was very clear. She didn't want this. It was too morose for her. And we are not, the term in French is deuil. You wearing the black. It's a period of time of mourning, official mourning.
Yeah, well, there used to be that you were supposed to wear it, whether you want it or not.
Yes, yes, yes,
and then it evolved into more something that you had a choice,
yes, yes.
as opposed to being something imposed on you.
Yeah.
So that's why some people, because it also, wearing so much black, it also doesn't help you heal sometimes.
No,
If you wear a long time, it impacts your energy and
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's more
prevents
demonstrated
you.
and it holds the grief in place.
Yeah, and then it more or less people stop doing it because I think people felt like they were not healing. They was like stuck in that awareness.
Again, you need to move on. And again, these cultural norms, if you want to go into them, that's your choice. But I think you should give yourself and your higher self an opportunity to explore your own inner truth. And however because no one grieves this ever the same way. Everybody has a different way of doing it.
Yeah.
So however it shows up, however it appears, however you deal with it. And I personally, for example, think it's very morose that on the anniversary, and this I used to hate to do, and my mother used to drag us to the cemetery in the anniversary of the death of my grandfather. We had to go to his tomb and clean it and bring coffee and say prayers and go to mass and do all of that stuff. And I didn't want to go to the cemetery. I was not interested. I felt uncomfortable in that space and scared. I didn't want to go there. But I didn't have a choice. I think a lot of it depends on how you grow up. But in certain culture, on the date of the anniversary, you honor the dead and you honor the ancestor and you do all of this stuff and all that. I got to a point where I think my grandfather, from my understanding of what I'm teaching now, my grandfather is not in that cemetery. He's reincarnated somewhere else already. And there is no reason why I should still go there. I'm doing this for me and for my mom. I'm not doing this because he's really there. And so I evolved a different perception, and I felt resistant to continue doing it. And now, of course, I'm not interested at all. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that's they do it in Europe too. Every year they go and do it, and it's there are some aspects of death and dying that we need to understand better for sure and learn from Buddhists.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then have better procedures, letting go and all those things. Sadly,
Yeah.
it's not being addressed, when with so much death being happening and more to come, that's just contributes to, doesn't help anything. Just
I don't mind the remembering maybe for the first few years of a deceased one, for our own sake, for the family's sake, let's get together, let's remembering and all that. But don't make it like some sort of like, I see people 40 years later, they're still stuck and they're still mourning, by the way. It's because the mourning is not finished. They're still mourning 30, 40 years later.
yeah, that sometimes can be a big problem. Like especially if it happens for people when they're younger, like people lose a young family and they use a mother or father, and they like never move on, and it's it creates a problem. It definitely creates a problem.
Again, go deep in the funnel and find out for you what really works, because the funnel can be connected to the loss, or it could trigger, in your instance, like it did for you, Ursula, with your mother, it brought up your own mortality and the fear of dying.
Yeah, which was interesting, and that kind of, I don't know if so I'm now picking up something else, and I like you said, I don't know what it is yet,
Mhm.
So I have to figure out, it's a little bit of a mystery what's gonna show up.
Yeah.
Because the deaf and dying was kind of easy to understand and pick up.
Yeah.
Now I'm feeling something else and I'm not sure what yet. So there'll be a surprise.
Yeah. And again, the events, the global event, the planetary event, are too big and too large for you and I to process. And if you're feeling overwhelmed about them, it is a normal feeling. If you're feeling overwhelmed with financial crisis, it's a normal feeling. But if you go deeper and deeper into the fear and go deeper and deeper into how it connects to you, what specifically are you afraid of? When you get to that bottom, and whatever that bottom represents for you, what's the core fear that it's triggering, it's panicking, the worst case scenario, then offer it to the blessed field and do the universal breath to move it out,
Right.
to
Right.
release it.
Right. Yes. And thank you, Pierre, for the reminding. Like you said, we know, but we forget.
Again, when you're in grief and you have these big emotions, you're inside a bubble where you don't have the clarity. You can't think of. I remember what feeling I was processing. I had to go back and read how to do the torsion field. I forgot how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I can teach that stuff in my sleep. I couldn't remember it for myself.
Yeah.
How to do the universal breath. I had to go back, and thank God I wrote it down. I had to go back and read it again to understand how does the breath go again.
Yeah. We definitely need the reminders. So
Because
thank
the
you.
feeling was so overwhelming inside of me. It's like an amnesia, a temporary erasure of my memory. I couldn't find it emotionally. I couldn't remember what I'm supposed to do. I remember thinking to myself, I could do the universal breath. I could, and I didn't have even, it's not just the erasing of that memory, but I don't have the energy nor the desire to actually do it.
Yes, I do feel that too sometimes. Like I'm so tired, I just feel so tired.
Yeah, I don't have the energy, nor do I have the desire to actually execute it.
Yeah.
I know that's what I'm supposed to do, and I have to do this and that, and I'm not, but I don't have the energy. I don't have the power in me now to actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like that sometimes. Yeah. Early in the morning is the easiest.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you, Pierre, for the reminders.
Yeah, not a problem. Any other questions or comments? All right, let's take a 5-minute break. And on the back end of that, we'll do a long meditation to help us process all of these feelings and bring all of the practice together dynamically so that we can begin to move these energies out. 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Realize that you can perceive 360 degrees all around you. And with that awareness, notice what you notice. Without judgments, and without resistance of any kind. Simply pay attention to any feelings, sensations, emotions that may exist in your core. Keep breathing deeply inside. And simply acknowledge any sensations, perceptions, feelings that are showing up for you. Become aware of any griefs or loss that may exist. What are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? Is it one feeling or a combination of multiple feelings? What is the first feeling? The second feeling? Are there any others? On a personal level, how is this loss grounded in your physical body? Is it triggering a personal fear? Is it the fear of dying? Or the fear of being alone? What vulnerability is this exposing for you? I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Take a very deep breath from the core of the earth. And let this breath move counterclockwise through the bottom of your feet, passing through you. And as it moves through your body, let it remove and dislodge this fear by moving it upward through this vortex of light with all that vulnerability. And let it exit your body and be released in the blessed field and the pool of light. Take a second breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move counterclockwise through the bottom of your feet, passing through your body, dislodging all residual parts of this vulnerability, grief, and loss. And let it exit outside of your head and be released completely into source. Surrender and let go. Unburden yourself. Take another breath from the core of the earth. Let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, counterclockwise, passing through your body and your core, dislodging this feeling and this vulnerability and fears and this loss, and let it all move outside of your head and be thrown into the pool of light as you surrender completely this burden and let go completely. Become aware of any other fears, uncomfortability, or sensations that may exist in your core. May be related to global events, financial concerns, worries about your safety, or moving through the landscape of constant change. As you identify this uncomfortability, take a very deep breath and allow yourself to sink deep into it. What am I really afraid of? What vulnerability is this fear rooted in? What loss would this create in me in a worst case scenario? Although I am overwhelmed by this possibility. I know with every fabric of my consciousness that it is all an illusion. It is Maya. For abundance, prosperity, and perpetual renewal is the currency of this universe. Now take a very deep breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet counterclockwise, passing through your body, dislodging this vulnerability and fear, and moving it outside of your body and your head, and releasing it completely into source. Let go. Take a second breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, passing through you, dislodging this vulnerability and fear, and let it move outside of your head and be released completely into source as you surrender and unburden yourself into the blessed field and into infinity times infinity. Take another breath from the core of the earth and let this breath move through the bottom of your feet, dislodging this fear from your body and moving this vulnerability in endlessness and into the light. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachment, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. Lord, restore your light in me. Connect me to your perpetually renewing ease, flow, abundance. And bless all aspects of my life with your prosperity and your miraculous and instantaneous changes and transformation. Transmute my physical body, my mental body, my emotional body, and my spirit by your grace, your power, and your wisdom. That I may be completely shifted into liberation, freedom, and ease. Let me become the grounding rod to demonstrate to the world the true power of your healing. Let me broadcast to my circle of influence the frequency and vibration of endless flow, and transmutation. May I release from my being a perpetual broadcast of miraculous, instantaneous, change, freedom, and transformation. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Hosanna into the highest. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Pierre. I hope that this has helped you and everyone on this call as much as it helped me. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts that I receive with gratitude.
You're welcome, Janice. You're welcome. Beautiful.
I wouldn't mind if
Yes,
possible to have a copy.
yes, yes. I'll send it to
That
you.
would be very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Any other comments from anybody else? Any other questions before we close? I want to thank all of you for being on the call tonight and for listening to me and hearing me. I want to also thank all my Patreon members who are supporting us. Thank you so much. Deep blessings to you. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this if it's aligns with you. I send you my deepest love, and I'll talk to you next week. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good
Thank you.
night. Good night. Love you all.
Bye.